Hello and welcome to Unleash Your Out-of-Home Creative Freedom and Wow the World. This is a session I gave in Bangalore in India last week for the OAC. And if you weren't there and if you couldn't attend, then obviously this is for you. So I do understand time travel is tricky. Hopefully this helps. First of all, who am I? I am Dino, I'm a techie, I'm a creative. I've worked in media and marketing and advertising for over 30 years. I've seen a few things, but I help people deliver innovative campaigns. That's what I do. Also, I like shirts. I haven't got a great one on today, I do apologise, but normally I do rock up in a good shirt. This is Vasant, and Vasant gave me a brief for the conference. Hey Dino, make it inspiring, but also keep it practical. I.e. talk about creativity, but we need some facts, which is usually missing from a creative conversation, so I'll add them today. First of all, let's talk about what is creativity in out of home. I've split it into four things: the art, the technology, the science, and the craft of out of home. And I'll go through each one of those and essentially give you something to take away. First of all, let's talk about the art. This is the mysterious bit. So we are all artists is the main thing to say. We are all in the same industry, but also it doesn't matter whether you're technical, whether you're in data, whether you're in management, whether you're in production, you are all artists. It's not just the creatives who are artists. Let's take Picasso, possibly one of the greatest recognized artists. So let's talk about, he has his canvas, he has his tools, he has his inspiration. Maybe he's going to paint the flowers later. He has a style maybe he needs to adhere to. He has restrictions, calendar on the wall. Maybe there's a date he needs to be aiming at. There's obligations, don't know what's in the envelope, quite frankly, but maybe there's a mortgage statement that he needs to pay. Or maybe there's a brief from a client. Maybe he has his curiosity as well. I love this pose, pensive, what's going to happen next? Who knows? You are artists too. You have the same tools. You have your canvas. You have your tools. You have your data, for instance. You have your inspiration. Maybe you've seen something from Cannes or some awards, or maybe even a competitor campaign, or maybe even something on TV or print, or even on radio that's triggered something. You have your style to adhere to, probably your client style guide, or maybe an in-house style that you're using. You have your restrictions, probably a budget and time. You have your obligations. You need to see results from this. You need a KPI. And also you have curiosity. So all of that said, like, what are you going to do next? What's going to make you stand out? What's going to get you those results within those restrictions, using your style, etc., etc. You probably have more tools than a normal creative has. Let's just get straight to the point. You have formats, you have fonts, you have images, you have knowledge, you have color, you have data, you have brand, you have copy, you have motion, you have network, you have location, you have tech, timing, but also time to spend. You also have scheduling, you have physicality, you have a lot of extra things to add to this as well. There's a load of things in those spaces I've not even listed. You probably have more tools than Picasso, so you've got no excuse to be creative. So let's talk about the science. Okay, this is the bit that normally you can't measure. Creative and science don't normally meet. They're seen as the end of the spectrums. However, that is incorrect. Let's go right back to the definition of what an advert is. It promotes a product or brand or service to an audience to elicit awareness, interest, engagement, or sales. So it promotes a thing to someone so that they do something. It's pretty much what that's saying. It's pretty simple. How do we do that? How do we measure it on the creative scale? Because you can't measure the creative, right? Well, it turns out actually you can. There are lots of studies out there, and you should be quoting these to your clients as well. So what affects the effectiveness of a campaign? This is by Mark Ritson. If you don't know Mark Ritson, please do and look him up. You won't be disappointed. However, creative execution is by far and away one of the most important things after brand and size. If you are a Coca-Cola, if you're a McDonald's, there's nothing you really can do other than brand and size is going to carry you through, but you can mess up the creative execution and it will have a huge amount of effect on your effectiveness. There are lots of other things like, share of voice, mass targeting, long and short mix, all that sort of stuff. But if you don't get the creative execution right, it will have a huge effect. Likewise, what drives profitability? Again, creative quality is second only to brand. You can't usually affect the brand size. That is done through history and lots of years of brand building, but you can actually get it wrong with the quality of the creative. So you have that in your control, and it is a huge effect on profitability as well. And it's also an amplifier as well. If you put out of home into the creative mix, it has an effect on the other channels you're already using. If you're having an online video campaign, and you put out of home in there, normally at the ends of the spectrum, you've got digital and then you've got out of home, but it actually boosts your online by 45%, TV by 35%, display by 18%. So quite frankly, if your out of home mix is less than 35% of your TV mix, it is going to be of benefit to you as well. So you need to see out of home as part of the mix and the creative as part of the same mix as well. So don't just see out of home on its own, TV on its own, two different campaigns. They all affect each other, and out of home has a huge effect on those other mediums. So you need to be designing in the same creative mix. And also, it is very visible. Now, this is actually from TV. This is a TV metric, and obviously there's no reason to make out of home look so good, yet it does. So this is what's called technical viewability versus actual viewability. So if you buy the media, is it actually available to see? So for online, it might be off the screen, it might be below the screen, it might not actually play. With out of home, it is 100% technically viewable, but also how many people actually see it? 82%. It is by far the greatest of all the medias. If you look at something like a 30-second TV banner or an ad, 43% of people actually see them, out of home 82%. So it is ultimately very viewable. It is accessible technically and actually as well. But this comes with a bit of a sting. How quickly do people actually take in the message? Well, with out of home, 2.8 seconds if it's a creative ad, a video, or if it's a static, it's 1.2 seconds. TV for 30 seconds, it will take 11 seconds, friends, of watching. So you only have 2.8 seconds maximum, let's say on average 2 seconds to get your message across. You need to design your creative within that restriction. So you don't have a huge amount of time, but you do have a huge amount of impact. So in short, creativity is critical for effectiveness and your return on investment. The brand is the most important thing, and we'll meet this very shortly. Out of home amplifies the other things you're doing, so treat it well. And also you have 2 seconds. Let's not forget the 2 seconds. Again, we'll see that later. Now let's talk about the tech as well. We talked about creative, but actually the tech and the creative work brilliantly together. Let's take a really good quote. This is Arthur C. Clarke. Love this one. Comes up all the time when you talk about tech and creativity. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If you don't know what's going on, people think it's magic. So to put in a different way, invisible technology highlights the creativity. The more invisible the technology, the more people think it is magic, it is creative. So let's work with that one. Obviously, everybody needs a graph. I didn't have a graph in this deck so far, so I've made one. Here you go, technology from visible to invisible, creativity, i.e. magic. And if you then plot the top bit, this is where the wow happens. If it's invisible, it is highly creative. That's where you need to be playing. So we need to think of technology as just a tool for the job. It helps you do your creativity. It is not the end goal. So who's looking at the billboard? Well, maybe install audience measurement camera. Okay, live interaction, like who's actually doing it? How do we do that with the screen? Well, maybe connect your mobile via WebSockets. That's the technology you'd use. If we need to make sure the right people are using it, then probably what we need to do is use programmatic, or we need reach data. If we need to send something to a person's phone via the billboard, well, maybe add a QR code, or then reconsider maybe retargeting or attribution at the end of that as well. And if people need to figure out what the temperature is or a product stock level, then clearly we connect it to an API. All the stuff at the top is the creative need, and all the bottom stuff is the technology that underpins that. It is just a tool. Sometimes you don't need the tool or the creative itself. So this is a really good example. What we used to do in advertising is sometimes think called Dino in bush technology, and I'll explain that. It doesn't have to be technology if you don't need it. You need to think creatively about the need for technology. Here's a really good example. So this billboard, you would stand in front of it, you would gesture to the billboard, you would thumbs up, you would blow a kiss, you would do a dance, and it would recognize the very, very minute gesture. If you did a thumbs up, it would give you a big heart symbol for saying thank you for the thumbs up. How did it do that? It was me in a bush, sat on some steps about 20 feet to the left with a mobile phone with some buttons. If I saw somebody blowing a kiss at the billboard, I'd press the blow kiss button. And that's all it was. It was very, very lo-fi. This billboard was essentially just a website in a billboard. So it looked like it was doing lots of technology, but it really wasn't. So you don't necessarily need it. If you're thinking, well, how do we start on this journey? Well, if you've got a static ad, for instance, well, maybe think of putting UV lights in your campaign so it glows differently at night, or reveals something interesting. If you can, see whether you can deliver your media as HTML, not just as a GIF or an MP4. And if so, if it's a website, then you can do some really interesting things live on the screen. Also connect it to an API. You can either do that through your media buy, or likewise, if you've got a HTML page, you can do it directly as it's served onto the page. And also maybe just think about a live camera feed. If you put a live camera feed at your audience on a billboard with your logos and messaging around it, they will interact with it. Obviously in a safe place, usually in a pedestrian or a shopping place. But let's talk about the craft, the actual doing it well. This is the bit that makes or breaks your creative campaign. Here are some rules. So the logo is the most important. As we know, the brand is the most important. If they take one thing away from your adverts, your billboard, it needs to be the brand. Do not hide it in the corner. Do not hide it way down within the text. It needs to be front and center and the top thing they take away. Put the logo at the top, put it in the middle. The one thing they take away from this advert is not the word have or a or delicious, it is Kit Kat. Make sure they do that. The message is the takeaway, so make sure that the message is very clear. Don't do lots of brand waffle and then tell them what the actual thing's about. New Sky Broadband Gigafast, 25 times faster. Got it, done. Sky's already in there as well. Very, very simple, nice and bold, done. Keep it simple, keep it factual. And also simplicity is key. No more than 3 things, no more than 10 words if you can. Here, you've got your message, you've got your product shot, you've got your logo. 3 things. You've got 2 seconds, so don't forget, that's all they're going to take away. If you have brand association, if you have anything in your brand toolkit, as we know, brand is the most important thing, put it in there. This is a really, really useful example. This is Barbie, this is for the movie. This is Barbie, right? It's just pink, it just uses the font. Just use your brand assets, use your logo. If you have a character or a mascot, use that as well. And be out of home specific. Don't just put a print ad in a billboard. So this is a great example for McDonald's. It uses the logo to then say, right, if you're getting off a road at this exit, this is how you find a McDonald's. So it is specific to out of home, to the location, but also it's using the brand. It's simple, and it's using all of those rules as well. And likewise, try and use psychology. Behavioral psychology is very important. So this one, for instance, if you let the person work for the message, they will think better of the product and the message itself. So this one, Coca-Cola, you're thinking that's interesting. Why is there a hand? You see the recycling bins, and then you then go back, you go, ah, right, open, taste, recycle, I get it. So that aha moment is very powerful in a consumer's mind for making them think, ah, I now have an invested interest in this because I've helped work it out. So these are all cool, but have you got any examples? Well, yes, I have. Let's go through these very quickly. If you're thinking, you've seen anamorphic 3D things, these are where you have a false perspective. They only really work from one angle, but when you do get that angle, it creates this great content you can share onto the internet. But you need to think one level further than that. So you've got people like Ocean in the UK and around Europe who are doing interactive anamorphic 3D as well, where you can now connect it to your phone and interact with these 3D anamorphic billboards. A really good example from O2, and this is all about physical messaging. It was all about insurance for your phone if you break the screen. So they broke the billboards. Now it also worked if you couldn't do one of these specials. You didn't need to necessarily sort of take the billboard off the panel. You can actually just use the crack, and the crack screen worked really well anyway as a creative device. So use the physical message as the message itself. And this is a really interesting one about the campaign timing. There's lots of things here. This is about domestic violence, and it was about if you walk past domestic violence, nothing changes. But if you engage in it, if you actually look at it, then you can make the change. Very similar to a billboard, so that's exactly what's going on here. The billboard has a camera in it. If you walk past the billboard, nothing happens. If you stare at the billboard, then the bruises get removed from the woman's face. And this was launched at the same time for International Women's Day, and the press came down and actually featured it on CNN, NBC, BBC, all sorts of places. So it's all about getting the timing right. It's not just about the campaign, it's about the wider environment it launches into and the social media that might happen as well. And this is all about solving the puzzle, the aha moment. Specsavers in the UK, very famous for their campaigns, has been running for years and years and years, hugely successful. It should have gone to Specsavers. So if your eyesight isn't great, then you'll make mistakes, is essentially what they're trying to do. Clearly, somebody's put the billboard up wrong. They should have gone to Specsavers. Bit of an in-joke for the out-of-home industry, but everybody gets it. Super simple. The idea is one thing. You've got a very simple message. You've got a very simple logo using the brand colors. it's all good. It's a great campaign. And this is one that there's just one at Cannes this year. This is Pedigree's Adoptable. And this is all about invisible technology. So this is about Pedigree, who make pet food, in this case dog food. And they will, of course, they're going to feature dogs on their adverts, which is what they're doing, but they want to make it useful. And there's a huge amount of technology that sits behind this. So this dog here is not actually a real dog, but it is a real dog that's sitting in a pound somewhere waiting to be adopted. So what they do is, obviously the people working there can't take studio photography, so they take basically a normal photo. Then there's an AI that will basically remodel the dog, reapply the features to it, make it posable so it can then appear in one of these ads. And each one of those ads has a QR code. If you scan the QR code, you can adopt that dog. Therefore, if that dog is adopted, it drops off the media rotation, it's not available anymore. So there's a huge amount of technology going on in the background that just make it look like a dog was photographed and is now adoptable through an ad. So invisible technology. And just to feature that McDonald's ad we saw earlier, this is how it works. You know, this is the McDonald's arches, and you can use it for left, right, you know, turn around, next exit, all that sort of stuff. Very, very simple, using the brand, using the colors, simplicity, and also it's very specific and very easy to reversion different countries. This was all about doing something that is magic. This is about sort of the legal versus illegal. In the UK, you're not allowed to look up somebody's insurance details of their cars. That is illegal. So this billboard for Churchill Insurance, who insured you against uninsured drivers, but how do you know how many uninsured drivers are on the road? It's impossible to tell, right? Otherwise, the police would use this technology. But actually what you can do is you can go to this central resource for insurance, and they'll tell you in each postcode how many people have been basically caught evading or not paying for their insurance. If you know how many people pay for it versus how many people don't pay for it, you can then have a ratio for each road in the country. If you then run a billboard right next to it, you can just count the cars with a very simple object tracker and a camera, and you can then increment this counter. For 10 cars that are insured, 1 is uninsured. And that's how you do this. So lots of people were like, how do you do this? With a little bit of creativity, you can use a different technology route. This is a great and a simple use of mobile phones as well. So this is for Adidas, and it perfectly summarizes what they need from their campaign, which is people to get out and run in the city. So it uses essentially a D6, a totem campaign. You go up to a billboard, you scan the QR code on your phone. It gives you a timer on your phone and tells you where to run to another billboard. You run to the other billboard, you scan the QR code, and it stops the timer. You then go onto a leaderboard, and you can be the winner, the fastest in the city. Really good use of technology, but also the billboard is relatively inert. It doesn't really do that much. It's mostly carried by the phone in between. So it's a really interesting use of mobile technology within the billboard world. And this is just such a simple thing. This is lenticular. So it's those little images that you have with the little scratchy plastic on top of it, that when you see them, they actually change the image underneath them, because it's just a printed advert, but there are several printed things in the same advert. And as you can see, as the bus goes by, the little characters disappear and they appear again, which is perfect for Midwich Cuckoos, which is all about essentially creepy kids in the woods. They appear and they disappear, and it's not digital, it is purely print. So really good use of creativity and lenticular, creating magic. This is Uber Eats and iftar. So iftar is the meal after the sun goes down if you are practicing or observing the holy month of Ramadan. And where you are and when the sun goes down is different around the world. So even in the UK, from west to east, then it will be slightly different. So this is a great campaign from Uber Eats. They would love to be the person that supplies your first meal after sundown, and therefore each one of the ads was then timed within minutes of each other, but very different across the country, to tell you exactly when it is okay to eat. And obviously you would then think, well, do you know what, I might get it via Uber Eats. So really interesting, can be done either through an API within the actual media itself, or just the media buying done very well. And this is Ovo, again, on that sort of thing. It's how is it more relevant? How does the advert reflect the actual medium itself or the message itself? And this is Ovo, who want to talk to you about green energy. So what they've got is they've got an API that is looking at the energy platform, the grid in the UK, and only when there is a surplus of green energy do they run the campaign. So they're only running their campaign on green energy for green energy. So really useful and interesting use of an API to then serve the media. And this is a really good craft example. So this is all physical. So this is Dracula. Dracula comes out after night. So all it needs is one light and a few stakes. Obviously that's also very on brand for Dracula. And at night you then create this shadow of Dracula. Brilliant. And obviously you've got this thing in the front, break glass for emergencies, and another stake just in case you're being chased by a vampire. But a really, really good example of craft and simplicity. And finally, we have the crazy cats at Insane 51 who create these dual image things that just use different colors and different filters. So obviously you need these kind of retro specs to see them, but it reveals two different images in the same printed thing, or the same mural in this case. Now you could actually have two panels in the street where you could walk between a blue one and a red one and see two different messages. You do not need the glasses, but really, really interesting. If you just think differently, how you can make the magic basically come to the fore and the technology go to the back. Main thing to say is you are all creative. All of these campaigns have started with a brief, all the restrictions and the KPIs, and they've made a creative asset of those as well. So you are all creative. Now go and wow the world. If you want a little bit of Dino every week, then do follow me on YouTube. I do a little video every Monday morning with all the latest innovations of every week. It's free, obviously. 10 minutes or so. It's a great start to your week. Go and sign up to that. And likewise, if you'd like to contact me, this is what I do for a living. I help you over your tricky things, but also run workshops, get your team up to speed. So hopefully that's been useful. If it has, get in touch, sign up to the YouTube, and I will see you again.